and welcome to Teaching Together. I'm Sierra.
And I'm Grace.
Well, this is another of our mini episodes on the topic of routines. And today we're talking specifically about how to teach classroom routines so that they actually stick with your students. In our full-length episode on this topic a couple of weeks ago, we were speaking about how to use routines to make teaching sustainable. And one of the ways that we can contribute to a sustainable career, I guess, for us as teachers is to make our classrooms operate smoothly and just our day-to-day management more sustainable. Grace and I have both shared that we hope to be teachers for quite some time. But this can be really hard if we kind of feel like we're constantly treading water. I don't know. I'm just literally having a vision right now of when I was in swim school and I was probably about 8 and the trauma of being told that you had to like tread water. Do you?
Yes. I remember this. I have one very specific memory of one very specific swim school lesson because it was obviously at the end of the year because my class was watching the Polar Express in our big amphitheater at school with the big screen, and I had to leave early and go to swim school, and I got a certificate for swimming with my eyes in the water.
Oh,
go me.
go you.
But treading water has always been something I've been really bad at.
Yeah.
And I do feel like my head is so heavy because I'm trying to keep it above water, but I am unable to.
It's so hard, and it's actually the perfect analogy for how I'm feeling right now at this moment. The start of the term, I do feel really like I'm using a lot of energy here and I'm not getting very far.
Oh,
But I think that's why that picture works so well and so many teachers resonate with that. And we're really not about this. We want people to feel like their workload is manageable and sustainable for a really long period of time.
Amen.
One of the things we can be doing to do that is not just build systems and routines for ourselves and our own administration, which we spoke about last week, but also having good, repeatable classroom routines.
As a primary teacher, I don't know you can use routines wherever, but I definitely rely on them to keep my classroom running. And I have found that everything just runs a bit smoother when I have good routines that I've really thought out and that I've communicated clearly. Part of why we love routines with students is because they know what to expect, especially with our little neurodiverse friends, of which I do count myself one. And I love the predictability of a routine. And I love that when I come into my classroom in the morning, I've taught my morning routine and they know what to do. And I just have to remind them, get your fruit break out, sit at your tables. That's all I have to do. And then I know that for the next 10 minutes, I don't have to think because my students are going to remind me of what the next part of our routine is. And I've thought about it before. That really helps me feel calm, and it helps the students feel calm as well. There's less me telling students what to do, and especially I think I've said this already. Moving to year 2, I want my students to have more independence in the classroom. So I want to be able to teach them routines that give them autonomy, so they know what to do. The parameters are very clear, and they can take some more ownership of our classroom. Because in kindergarten, everything was quite teacher-directed, and I want to enable my students to be able to do more on their own.
I think that's really helpful too when we think about, I'll often catch myself when I might be, I can notice when a student feels like I'm just picking on them.
Yeah.
If I'm constantly having to say, you need to do this, or you've been asked to get your laptop out, or you need to do X, Y, Z, or whatever. And it's often, the same 2 or 3 kids that need the regular reminders.
Yes, it is.
But I can see when they start feeling like, oh, she just doesn't get off my back kind of thing. And I think, I want to build good rapport with my students. And even though, the corrections that I'm saying might be valid, perhaps if I had a better routine that was explicitly taught, then there wouldn't be so much need for the constant correction. And then there's kind of less friction that builds between myself and the student. So I think, having not just good routines, but routines that are explicitly taught to our students is really, really key.
Yeah, and I definitely learned that in my 2 years of kindergarten, that it just, you need to spend time to make time, particularly at the start of the year. And you might spend a whole session of the day going over a really valuable routine, or you might be that teacher that goes, oh, you didn't do it correctly, we're all going to do it again. But that investment really does pay off. Like, it really does, from my experience. It really does pay off. Definitely worth it. And we're still at the start of the year, so there's still time. There's still time to teach your routines. You do not need to fret. So what does it mean to actually teach a routine? I'm glad you asked, dear listener, because we're about to answer that question for you. So, I mean, it'll be news to no one that I work at a school that focuses on inquiry learning. So teaching routines it's actually a deviation from normal practice for me, because I go, this is what I want you to do. Please do it exactly this way. And like with little kids, you act it out. So you might say, oh, imagine that Miss Keane has asked you, can you go get your whiteboards? Well, you'll get up out of your chair, and that's when I get up out of my chair, and you go and get your whiteboard and blah, 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 blah. And you narrate like I just did, and you do lots of practice. I remember in my first year of kindergarten, the configuration of my room was such that when students needed their whiteboards on the floor for like maths or whatever, they would get up in their rows that they sat in on the floor, and they needed to be looking for the last person in the row in front of them to stand up, because that's when their row would stand up. And then they would wait, they would get their boards and then sit down. And we practiced that so many times. We just drilled it. Like, you really do have to be a drill sergeant sometimes. And the big focus for me was no talking, because this was a very active cohort of children. And we just practiced it a lot. They knew the purpose. Like, I explained to them, this is why I want you to do it this way. Yeah. And I would make sure that I gave really specific feedback while they were doing it, whether it was like actually in a lesson when I asked them to do it, or when we were practicing. Like, oh, I love the way that this student is waiting really quietly in their line, or great job, Joe, I saw that you were waiting for the person in front of you to stand up and then you stood up. Like, that is really helpful, I have found, for infants, to be that specific. And it really worked. And that routine eventually was one of the things they could do really well in my class. And I did not need to speak at all by the end, which is that's one of the goals of a good routine, is so the cognitive load is off everyone. Like, the students know what to do, and you can maybe spend that time getting your slides ready or moving some resources around while they do whatever they need to do. So you don't have to be on them all the time.
Yeah, I think basically what you've described pretty much perfectly embodies that kind of I do, we do, you do model and approach to explicitly teaching something. This is not a new or groundbreaking concept, but I think it is really helpful that sometimes when we feel like we've explained something that we want our kids to do, we think that we've been explicit. But so often, like that, I'm acting this out. I'm showing you what I need to do. I'm also speaking aloud my thinking so that you understand what I'm looking for. I really liked how you said about, teaching them to look for when the last person in front has come and sat back down, because like that's just making really clear what you mean by, you say, when everyone's come and sat back down, or when it's your turn to go next. It's like, how do I know when it's my turn to go next? Well, you'll know when you see this person, and sometimes, obviously, I guess with little people, you probably need to be that extra bit explicit. But honestly, I can think of quite a few high schoolers who would benefit from that level of explicitness as well. And it's just like, it just leaves no remaining questions. I do it. I'm showing you exactly what I want you to do, and I'm thinking aloud so that you understand the thinking behind it. That's really good modeling. Then the we do, you're practicing. I also really like that you said you dedicated time to practice together as a class. It's not just you've explained it and you've modeled it and now you expect them to be able to do it mid-lesson while they're also thinking about a million other things. And then with the modeling and the practice combined, we should be able to start seeing them complete the routine that as the, the you do part of that kind of model, with you slowly being able to kind of remove that scaffolding or those remindings or corrections and things like that. And just being able to continue reinforcing your routine through all those little praise comments you were making about, I love this and I love that. I think sometimes we forget how explicit we really need to be.
I completely agree. And I really have learned that from working with 6-year-olds is that they really just need it broken down one step at a time. And that's okay. Like sometimes they'll need that. And honestly, I love that as an adult. Just tell me what I need to do so that I can focus on the learning.
Yeah, literally.
I love it as a teacher. I love it for my class. I find that really, if I can just have a routine for pretty much anything that you do regularly in your classroom, find a routine for it. Like, I'm really bad at this one. I always give students a different spot to put their work when it's finished, which really frustrates me. I don't know how they feel about it. They probably don't care. But if I could have a routine of your finished work goes here every single time, I'm not going to have 20 children asking me, where does my work go when it's done? And I don't have to explain myself 1,000 times. Yeah. So no one's getting overstimulated and we're all good.
One of the things that has just occurred to me, I think I spoke in our last episode about needing to set some better cleanup routines in my classroom, end of lesson things. You'll be very proud of me. Today, I did wrap my class up about 4 or 5 minutes before the bell because I've now corrected my classroom clock so that it is accurate and not 5 minutes slow. And I actually asked them kind of an exit ticket type question. And I held up my brand new Fresco coffee cup, which I'm very excited about because Grace got me onto these and it has so far been fantastic. And we'd been talking about functional and aesthetic criteria. And yeah, I was like, okay, if we're looking at this, what's one positive functional feature? And then they were rattling off different things about, it keeps things hot. Great. Why does it keep things hot? And then we were talking about the material, which was all relating to the research that they had done that lesson. And I was just really proud of myself for finishing with an appropriate amount of time to kind of feel like I could round that out nicely and get them to put their stools under the table and all those other sort of routine type things. But one thing that I really need to explicitly teach my children is how to sweep. When I say someone go and grab the broom and sweep up the floor, I swear they just go around in circles. No one really knows where they're sweeping to or... Sorry, the look on Grace's face is absolute puzzling.
I am befuddled.
But I have literally had to get a broom in my hands and go, when we sweep the floor, we visualize a quarter of the room and we start in one corner of that quarter and we move
Look, I should not be making this face of befuddlement because I don't have any common sense and I need to be explicitly taught everything. But yeah, I mean, you can't assume that kids know because, you might be, especially if they're in year 7 or 8, you're probably the first person who's ever told them to do this.
They probably have a RoboVac in their house,
which I want.
Maybe never had to use a broom.
Yeah, I mean, and I have a broom, but I don't ever use it because I have just a vacuum cleaner.
Yeah.
And why would you sweep?
Why would you?
But in a classroom, would you have a vacuum? Yeah. You have a vacuum at home, but you have a broom at school. But it's just wild. But yeah, that's interesting. There you go.
Those sorts of things that we need to remember that not everybody has experienced what we're asking them to do before, and they also perhaps don't really understand the reasoning behind why they're doing something or what the end goal is. If I say someone grab the broom, I haven't really articulated
what to do with it.
Yeah, and I'm just assuming that they know, but that's actually apparently not adequate.
Yeah, I have really learned as I've been teaching that I sometimes or often will make mental jumps in my logic based on, my thinking and how I've been raised and how I went to school and blah, 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 and just, stuff about what makes me me. And I'm articulating that to 8-year-olds or 6-year-olds who have been brought up in completely different ways and are still learning how to be humans. And they go, what do you mean by that? And I go, let me just rewind and say things in a whole sentence.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just really, translating everything that's happening in your brain to your mouth.
Yeah. So when you think of a fantastic routine or something that you just want done in your classroom, I think there's a lot of things I just want done that I probably haven't come up with a specific routine for that I probably need to do. Like not just a cleanup routine, but actually how we clean the floors and how we clean the tables and how we leave the room at the end of the lesson. Like all those things need their own individual routine. We need to teach them explicitly through modeling, think alouds, practice, and implementation.
And give them opportunities to re-practice after you've taught it. Like obviously, if you see that they're slipping a bit in the expectations you've set, reteach it. But it might be helpful just to go over it again, because it might just reinforce something or remind a student of something that they weren't paying attention to the first time. We can just never assume that, all the work that we've done, we're so prepared. We've thought about all of this beforehand. This is the first time they're hearing it.
Yeah.
So we need to give them more time and more practice than we think.
Yeah. And like we said before, we want things to feel sustainable. So we want us and the kids both to be able to feel like they can function in our classroom spaces without constant, corrections that might create friction between you and the student, and save those kind of corrections for things that actually matter. When we can correct their behavior or their choices and have conversations with them about that, not constantly kind of nagging them about how to use a broom. And it gives us more space to do our job well.
Yes, exactly. Because we don't need to then manage like 20 or 30 other humans, which is exactly what I was doing yesterday afternoon during choice time, which is basically just free play. And I had all these kids coming up to ask me 1,000 things because, it was choice time. And they're like, can I do this? Can I do that? Blah, blah, blah. And I lost my train of thought like 17 times and I didn't finish the task. And I'm so glad that my intern Talia was there, because she got all this cutting done that I had sat down to do. And she was like, can I help you? I was like, sure. And she did most of it because I just kept getting interrupted. And so that has told me maybe I should spend some time like establishing the expectations for choice time. Yeah. And there's a bunch of other things I can think of in my classroom, but like anything that is repetitive or regular, that is, diverting your attention from being a good teacher could probably use a routine.
And at the end of the day, we already have to make so many decisions, and answer so many questions. And that can be overwhelming and overstimulating and a little bit, too much sometimes. So we really want to, reduce friction in our own minds, in relationships with students, in every way possible, so that we don't leave our classrooms at the end of the day feeling totally wiped and from having sort of treaded water all day, by feeling like we're on the go and we're having to think and think for our students at sort of every step. We want to train them to be able to make decisions for themselves. And routines are kind of going to do two things, I think. They're going to, firstly, set really clear expectations for the students. But, in getting them to follow those things specifically, one might argue, well, are we really teaching them to think for themselves? But I think if we're modeling not just what we want them to do, but why we want them to do it, as they get older and they mature and they're exposed to more situations where there are less and less explicit guidelines, hopefully they retain not just the routine that we followed, but can apply some of those rationales and reasons for why we do things in a particular way. In case anyone else ever asks them to pick up a broom,
they'll be like, oh, I've done this before
and I know what I'm looking for.
I can transfer my skills. And I think probably what's important to just reiterate as we bring this to a close is that you're not trying to control every element of your classroom. You're actually trying to create a predictable environment that is therefore calm, and where students can feel safe, and where you feel safe and calm, and where everyone can focus on learning.
It's the same reason with the repeatable checklists. Anything that has to be done over and over again, We don't want that taking up really precious space in our sweet students' brains that literally are limited in how many different pieces of information they can hold, how much stimuli they can process at once. So many different things. We want to just reduce that and make it smooth because you're exactly right. We're there to make as much space and time available for learning.
And that brings us to the end of our second ever mini episode. Thank you so much for joining us, and we hope that this has been really practical and helpful, and giving you some direction maybe if you're feeling a bit lost. And we've had so much fun recording it. So thanks for being here. We're on all the socials at Teaching Together the podcast. Interact with us because we want to interact with you. And until next time, bye.